So the Time for School video was talking about 4 different kids that they had followed from 2003 to 2009 in their schooling. Um, and it kind of talked about, one thing I found really interesting is it talked about at first 189 countries made a deal for themselves that by 2015 there'd be free education around the world, because a lot of different countries aren't like in America where we have like a free public school. A lot of the families have to pay for it. So the first girl was in Afghanistan and she was 16, and it said 1 out of 3, 1/3 of children are not in school, and most of those are girls because it talked about girls do all of the housework and all the things that need to be done at home, taking care of siblings, and boys don't do anything when they get home from school. Because it said they get made fun of if they do any housework. So a lot of the girls do it, and the girl had 12 other siblings, so she kind of had to do most of it herself. Um, and in the past couple of years in Afghanistan, 600 schools were closed because of the Taliban and them attacking girls' schools because they're against education for women. So a lot of the times she talked about that she's scared for her life when she's in school and when they go to school, especially when a school in her Providence got attacked by gas, like poisonous gas, and so all the girls got sick inside the school. So I thought it was just really interesting the kind of like life that she had to live, because she was really thirsty for her knowledge, and she was really thirsty for knowledge, but she wasn't really allowed to go to school. It was really hard for her to go to school for it. So I think a lot of times, especially as girls, we don't take our education that seriously. We don't take our education that seriously because we can't go to school. And next was this kid in Brazil. And it said at the least they do 4 years of school. So that's a lot better than even in Afghanistan for girls, even though this was a little boy going to school. Because most of the time in Afghanistan they don't even go to school. But it was really hard because what they called it is he lived in the slums, and so it was a very poor neighborhood, and it had a lot of war turf for drugs from the government and from drug dealers, and so but his mom did send him to a government-funded after-school program, which actually really did help him a lot, which I thought was cool, because I've heard a lot about, in my child development classes, I've heard a lot about after-school programs, even here, that they do for underprivileged children. So I thought that was really interesting that they also have something like that. But one thing is, too, is that 2 out of 3 kids drop out by the 8th grade, and so a lot of them don't get the chance to go to, like, secondary school, is what they called it, because a lot of them become drug dealers inside their own neighborhood. But they said that he was doing really well. And another thing that I thought was interesting is that he was doing so well that they allowed him to skip a grade. But then once he got to 5th grade and was going to move on to middle school in 6th grade, they wanted to hold him back because they didn't feel like he was emotionally ready to be around older kids all the time. So I thought that was interesting, just because they felt the need to push him forward, but then held him back because they didn't think he was ready. And his after-school teacher thought that it was a really bad idea, because she thought that it would make him feel bad about himself, and he wouldn't want to move forward in school anymore because he would be disinterested. And the one that probably was surprising to me the most was the girl from India. Because most of the time in schools they don't even learn how to read or write or math. So I don't really know what they were taught in school, but she had to go to night school because she lived in a really traditional neighborhood, and the girls weren't allowed to go to school during the day unless their parents did it for them, like pushed them to go to day school. And her mother made a comment that was like, why she doesn't feel the need to be educated, because she's like, look at all the educated people, they have nothing to do all day anyway, like, we educated our boys, and what good has it done? So she really, in her family, she really wasn't pushed to even go to school. And so at first she really liked it and she did well. but then her parents took her out of school so that she could move with the cattle to find water. And so she missed like half of the school year, and so by the time she got back, she was really behind. And when she tried to go to, they tried to put her into day school, but she was, I think, 13 and only was in the second grade. And so she dropped out because she was younger than a lot of the students. And I think part of that was just her not being supported by her parents, um, which is something we don't really have to deal with here because it's law that we have to go to school at least through high school. So I thought that was interesting that her parents didn't feel the need to educate her, even though she wanted to be educated. And then the one that was most like America's schooling system was the kid from Japan, because 100% of them go to secondary school, and even onwards, a lot of them still do up into college. And they have state-funded daycare that all of them, that pretty much everybody goes to. So by the second day of first grade, all of the children in his class were reading the school's like anthem, which I thought was really interesting because most of the time, even here, that's where we learn to read, is in like kindergarten and first grade. That's when we start, and by then they could already read fluently. Um, but one thing that they did say is they relaxed Japan's schooling system to where they don't need to go to school on Saturdays anymore. But a lot of the teachers were saying that they noticed that kids started to become lazier and they weren't doing as well in school as they used to because they were taking it lightly. Which, because Japan has usually been like the first, like the top rated schooling system in the world, and now it's slipping. And so a lot of them think it's because of that reason. Um, but from what I noticed, when they said slipping, it was becoming more like America's schooling system. So I think it'd be interesting to see kind of how, in the next couple of years, because that started in 2009, so it's been a while since then, but just kind of how much that has affected it, if it is just that reason that they've kind of laxed in the schooling system, or if other countries are just doing better. But it was kind of cool to see kind of from like the lowest of like India, where girls aren't educated, they don't need to go to school, they're not meant to go to school, you know, they stay home and do everything, kind of up to Japan, where it's everybody goes to school, everybody's expected to go to school, and they do a lot better in that country, just how developed everything was, from underdeveloped to developed countries. So it was a pretty interesting video, and I really liked it, being able to follow these children and kind of see what their lives were like. So I really enjoyed it.